When billionaire Julian Crane meets clinic worker Tessa Monroe, her indifference shakes his world and sparks a journey that may cost him his legacy, but win him everything else. Before we get into the story, comment below, where in the world you are watching from today. Julian Crane stared at the skyline from his penthouse window, nursing a glass of expensive whiskey. At 42, he had everything money could buy: designer suits, luxury cars, and a real estate empire that had transformed the city. The newspapers called him the king of glass and steel, but tonight, like most nights, he felt empty. His phone buzzed with messages from women wanting his attention. Julian ignored them all. The last charity gala had landed him on the front page of the society section again, another blonde socialite on his arm. He couldn't even remember her name. Mr. Crane, his assistant's voice came through the intercom. Don't forget your vaccination appointment tomorrow morning. You need it before your Dubai trip next week. Julian frowned. He'd forgotten completely. Where is it scheduled? The West Side Community Health Clinic. It was the only place with an opening. Julian raised an eyebrow. The West Side district was one of the neighborhoods his company had begun developing, or gentrifying as his critics called it. He rarely ventured into that part of town anymore. Fine, he said. Schedule the car for 9 a.m. The next morning, Julian walked into the modest clinic, feeling immediately out of place in his $3,000 suit. The waiting room was crowded with tired-looking families and elderly patients. A few recognized him, whispering behind their hands. He approached the front desk, where a woman with her head down was typing rapidly on an outdated computer. She didn't look up. "Excuse me," Julian said, using the smooth, charming voice that usually got immediate attention. "Sign in." "Please," she said, still not looking at him. "Insurance card and ID." Julian wasn't used to being dismissed. "I have an appointment for a vaccination. Julian Crane." The woman finally looked up, and Julian felt an unexpected jolt. She was beautiful in a quiet way. Deep brown eyes, smooth dark skin, and a face that showed strength and dignity. No makeup, just natural beauty. Her name tag read Tessa Monroe. Her expression didn't change when she saw him. No flutter of recognition, no smile, nothing he was accustomed to receiving. "Mr. Crane, ID and insurance card, please," she repeated, holding out her hand professionally. Julian handed over his documents, strangely unsettled by her complete lack of interest. "Take a seat. We'll call you when it's your turn," she said, handing back his cards without making eye contact again. Julian sat down, unable to stop glancing at her. Every other patient who approached received the same efficient professional treatment, but he noticed she smiled warmly at a mother with a fussy baby. The smile transformed her face completely. An hour passed before they called his name. Julian wasn't used to waiting for anything, but he found himself more fascinated than annoyed. When the nurse finally led him to an exam room, he looked back at Tessa one more time. She never looked up. The vaccination took less than 5 minutes. As Julian left, he slowed at the front desk. "Thank you, Ms. Monroe," he said deliberately. Tessa glanced up briefly. "Have a good day, Mr. Crane." 3 days later, Julian returned to the clinic with a large check. The director, a tired-looking man in his 60s, couldn't believe his eyes when Julian Crane walked in, asking to make a donation. "This is incredibly generous, Mr. Crane," the director said. "May I ask what prompted this?" Julian smiled. "I believe in supporting community health initiatives." It wasn't entirely a lie. He did donate to charities regularly, though usually at galas where photographers were present. This quiet gift was different. The director insisted on giving him a tour. As they rounded the corner to the reception area, Julian's eyes immediately found Tessa. She was on the phone, nodding patiently. As she took notes, "That's Tessa Monroe, one of our best staff members," the director said, noticing Julian's gaze. "Single mom, works 2 jobs, still manages to be the most reliable person here." Julian nodded, filing away this new information. Impressive. When the tour ended near Tessa's desk, Julian stopped. "Hello again, Ms. Monroe." Tessa looked up, a flicker of recognition in her eyes. "Mr. Crane, back so soon?" "Just touring your fine facility," he said with his practiced smile. "How nice," she replied without enthusiasm. then turned back to her computer. Julian wasn't used to being dismissed so easily. It bothered him all the way back to his office. The following week, instead of flying to Dubai, Julian sent his vice president. He couldn't explain why, even to himself, but he volunteered to join the clinic's advisory board, showing up for a meeting where he was the only person wearing a tie. Tessa was there, taking minutes. When she handed out folders to everyone, she barely glanced at Julian. It was maddening. Women always noticed him. They always wanted something from him, his money, his connections, his status. But Tessa looked right through him. After the meeting, Julian approached her as she gathered her papers. "Ms. Monroe, I was wondering if you might show me where to find a coffee around here. I'm not familiar with this neighborhood." Tessa looked at him directly for the first time. Her eyes were suspicious. "There's a diner across the street. They serve coffee." She turned to leave, then paused. "Whatever you're selling, Mr. Crane, I'm not buying." Julian was stunned into silence as she walked away. No one spoke to him like that. No one. That evening in his empty penthouse, Julian couldn't get Tessa's words out of his head. Not her rejection. He'd been rejected before, though rarely, but the implication that he was selling something. As if he were just another smooth-talking con man. The next morning, Julian cancelled 3 meetings and went to the public library. The librarian looked shocked when he asked for books on community, health services and urban development impacts. He spent hours reading, taking notes, seeing his own buildings through different eyes. A week later, Julian returned to the clinic for another advisory board meeting. This time, he brought no charm, no smooth lines, just research and thoughtful. Questions, Tessa noticed. She still didn't smile at him, but she listened when he spoke about redirecting some of his company's development funds toward community preservation. After the meeting, she approached him. "That was an interesting proposal, Mr. Crane." Julian felt oddly pleased by her comment. "Thank you, I've been doing some research." "Why?" she asked bluntly. The question caught him off guard. "Why what? Why are you really here? Men like you don't suddenly care about community clinics." Julian considered lying, considered a smooth answer, but something in her direct gaze made him pause. "I'm not entirely sure," he admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. Tessa studied him for a moment. "At least that sounds truthful." She picked up her bag. "Good night, Mr. Crane." 2 days later, Julian was back at the clinic, this time with architectural plans. He'd had his team draft options for expanding the clinic's cramped waiting room. The director was ecstatic, but Julian found himself searching the reception area. Tessa wasn't at her desk. "She's off today," a nurse told him, noticing his glance. "Her son has a piano recital." Her son. The director had mentioned she was a single mother. Julian tried to picture Tessa sitting proudly in an audience, watching her child perform. That evening, Julian found himself driving to the community center, where the nurse had mentioned the recital was being held. He told himself he was just checking on an important community venue, perhaps another opportunity for his charitable foundation. He slipped into the back of the auditorium as a small boy with warm brown skin and a serious expression sat at the piano. The program identified him as Miles Monroe, age 9. He played beautifully, his small fingers moving with precision and feeling across the keys. In the front row, Julian spotted Tessa, her face filled with quiet pride. When the recital ended, Julian stayed in his seat, watching as Tessa embraced her son. She looked different, softer, her professional armor set aside. She wore a simple blue dress instead of her clinic scrubs, and her hair was down. She looked young and vibrant and beautiful. Miles spotted Julian first. The boy tugged on his mother's sleeve and pointed. Tessa turned, her smile fading when she saw Julian. He approached cautiously. "That was beautiful playing," he said to Miles. "Thank you, sir," the boy replied politely. "Mr. Crane," Tessa said, her voice cool as she placed a protective hand on her son's shoulder. "This is a surprise." Julian felt suddenly foolish. "I was interested in the community center programs. Your son is very talented." Miles beamed, but Tessa's eyes narrowed. "Thank you, we need to go now." "Of course," Julian said. "Good night, Ms. Monroe." "Good night, Miles." As they walked away, Julian heard Miles ask, "Who was that man, Mom?" No one important, Tessa replied, just loud enough for Julian to hear. Her dismissal stung more than it should have. The following Monday, Tessa found a package on her desk at the clinic. Inside was a book about famous pianists through history, with a note that read, "For Miles, talent deserves encouragement. JC." Tessa marched straight to the director's office where Julian was discussing the expansion. "Plans, I can't accept this," she said, placing the book on the table. Julian looked up, surprised. "It's just a book. I don't want your gifts, Mr. Crane." The director excused himself awkwardly, leaving them alone. "It's for your son," Julian said. "Not for you." "Why are you doing this?" Tessa asked. "First the donation, then the board. Now, this, what do you want?" Julian stood up. For once in his life he had no smooth answer, no practiced line. "I want you to look at me," he said quietly. "Really look at me. Not the money or the name or the reputation. Just me." Tessa stared at him, caught off guard by his honesty. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. Then she shook her head. "I have work to do," she said, but she took the book with her when she left. That night, as rain pounded against his penthouse windows, Julian realized something that shocked him. For the first time in years, he was thinking about someone other than himself. He wanted to know more about Tessa Monroe and her piano-playing son. He wanted to know what made her so strong, so unmoved by his wealth and power. Most of all, he wanted to know what it would take to make her really see him. Not as Julian Crane, successful businessman, but as Julian, a man who suddenly felt very alone in his glass tower. 2 weeks passed, and Julian found more and more reasons to visit the clinic. He brought coffee for the staff, attended every advisory board meeting, and even helped organize a fundraiser that brought in twice the clinic's annual budget in one night. The director was thrilled, but Tessa remained cautious. She watched Julian charm everyone around him while keeping her own walls firmly in place. Still, she couldn't help noticing small changes in his behavior. He remembered the names of every staff member. He listened more than he spoke, and sometimes, when he thought no one was looking, his confident smile disappeared, revealing a man who looked surprisingly lost. One evening, as a thunderstorm raged outside, Tessa was working late. The clinic had been chaotic all day, with weather-related injuries and patients seeking shelter. When she finally finished her paperwork, she was exhausted. She was surprised to see Julian still there, talking quietly with an elderly patient in the waiting room. "Mr. Andrews needs a ride home," Julian explained when he saw her. "I've called my driver." Tessa nodded, too tired to question his presence. "That's kind of you." Julian studied her face. "You look exhausted." "It's been a long day," she admitted. After Julian's driver arrived to take Mr. Andrews home, Julian turned to Tessa. "Let me walk you to your car." "That's not necessary. It's pouring rain and it's late," he said. "Please." Something in his voice, the lack of his usual smoothness, made her agree. They stepped outside under the clinic's small awning, the rain coming down in sheets. Julian opened a large black umbrella and held it over her. They walked silently to her old Honda in the back of the parking lot. As they reached her car, Julian noticed her shiver. Without hesitation, he removed his coat and placed it around her shoulders. "What are you doing?" she asked, startled. "You're always cold after work," he said simply. Tessa looked at him, genuinely surprised. He'd noticed such a small detail about her. No smooth lines, no charming smile, just a quiet observation that revealed actual attention. "I don't want to owe you anything," she said, her voice cracking slightly. Julian's reply was gentle. "Then, owe me nothing, just let me stand here." For the first time, Tessa really looked at him, not the wealthy businessman, not the clinic's benefactor, but the man standing in the rain holding an umbrella over her while getting soaked himself. "Thank you," she said finally, slipping into her car. Julian nodded, watching as she drove away. The next morning, his coat was hanging on the back of his chair in the clinic's meeting room, with a note that simply read, "Returned with thanks." "TM," Julian smiled, folding the note carefully into his wallet. That weekend, Julian was attending a charity gala when his mother approached him. Eleanor Crane was a striking woman in her 60s, known for her social influence and her critical eye. "Darling, where have you been hiding?" she asked, air-kissing both his cheeks. "Vivian Mercer has been asking about you. She's divorced now, you know." Julian sighed. "I've been busy with work, Mother. Too busy for society. People are talking, Julian. You haven't been seen with anyone in weeks." She lowered her voice. "And I hear you've been spending time in that dreadful neighborhood where your father used to work." Julian stiffened. His father had been a doctor who worked in community clinics before his death 10 years ago. Eleanor had always considered it a waste of his talents. "I'm supporting a healthcare facility, Mother. It's good PR for the company." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Just make sure that's all it is. You have a reputation to maintain." Across the room, Julian spotted his brother Thomas talking with some investors. Unlike Julian, Thomas had never shown interest in the family business. He preferred gambling and drinking away his trust fund. Their relationship had been strained since Julian refused to bail Thomas out after his latest financial disaster. Thomas saw Julian watching and raised his glass in a mocking toast. Later that evening, Julian found himself bored with the usual shallow conversations. He slipped out early and, without really planning to, drove to Tessa's neighborhood. He parked outside a small diner near the clinic and went inside. To his surprise, Tessa was there, sitting in a booth with Miles. The boy was eating ice cream. While Tessa looked over what appeared to be homework, Miles saw him first. "Mom, it's that man from my recital." Tessa looked up, clearly startled to see Julian standing there in his tuxedo. "Mr. Crane," she said, "what are you doing here?" Julian suddenly felt foolish. "I wanted coffee." Miles grinned. "They have good chocolate milkshakes too." Julian smiled at the boy. "Is that right?" "Miles," Tessa said quietly, "finish your homework." Julian started to turn away. "I'm sorry to interrupt your evening." "Wait," Tessa said, surprising herself. "You can join us if you want." Julian sat down carefully, aware that he was overdressed for the simple diner. A waitress brought him coffee, doing a double take at his tuxedo. "How was your recital?" Julian asked Miles. The boy's face lit up. "I got first place, and my teacher says I might get a scholarship for special lessons." "Miles has a gift," Tessa explained, her love for her son evident in her voice. "But private lessons are expensive." "That's wonderful about the scholarship," Julian said to Miles. "The book I gave you, did you like it?" Miles nodded enthusiastically. "I read about Mozart. He was playing concerts when he was my age." Tessa watched their interaction with cautious eyes. "Miles, it's getting late. Go wash your hands before we leave." When Miles was out of earshot, Julian spoke quietly. "He's a remarkable boy." "Yes, he is." Tessa looked directly at Julian. "Why are you really here, Mr. Crane? And don't tell me it was for coffee." Julian hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I left a charity event early. Everyone there wanted something from me. Business deals, social connections, my mother's approval. I just wanted to be somewhere. Real." Tessa studied him for a long moment. "And you came here?" "I didn't plan to. I just drove." Something in his expression must have convinced her he was telling the truth. She nodded slowly. "Well, we need to get home. Miles has school tomorrow." Julian paid for their meal despite Tessa's protests. As they walked to the parking lot, Miles chatted excitedly about his piano dreams. "Maybe someday you could come hear me play again," Miles said to Julian. Before Tessa could object, Julian replied, "I'd like that very much." As they parted ways, Tessa gave Julian a small nod. It wasn't exactly friendly, but it wasn't hostile either. It was a start. The following week, Julian missed the clinic's board meeting. Tessa told herself she wasn't disappointed, but she found herself looking up whenever the door opened. 3 days later, Julian appeared at her desk, looking tired. There was a fading bruise on his cheekbone. "What happened to you?" Tessa asked. Before she could stop herself, Julian touched his face self-consciously. "Family disagreement. My brother has a good right hook." Tessa raised an eyebrow but didn't pry. "I came to apologize for missing the meeting," Julian continued. "There was a situation with my brother I had to handle." You don't owe me an explanation, Tessa said. No, but I wanted to give you one anyway. He hesitated. Would you have dinner with me? Just dinner. Tessa was taken aback by the direct question. Mr. Crane, Julian, he corrected, please. Julian, she said, the name feeling strange on her lips. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Tessa gestured at the space between them. Look at you, and look at me. We're from different worlds. Maybe that's why I want to have dinner. With you, Julian said quietly. One meal, that's all I'm asking. Tessa hesitated. I have Miles to think about. Bring him along, Julian suggested. Then, seeing her expression, he added, or not, it's your choice. Before she could answer, the clinic director rushed over. Tessa, your neighbor just called. Miles fell off his bike. They're taking him to County Hospital. Tessa went pale. I need to go. My car's outside, Julian said immediately. It'll be faster than waiting for a taxi. Tessa didn't argue. They raced to Julian's sleek black car, and his driver sped them to the hospital. In the emergency room, they found Miles sitting on an exam table, his arm in a temporary splint. He looked small and scared, but his face brightened when he saw his mother. Mom, I tried to jump my bike over the curb like Jason does, but I crashed. Tessa hugged him carefully. Don't you ever scare me like that again. The doctor explained that Miles had a broken wrist, but would be fine. As Tessa filled out paperwork, Julian sat with Miles, keeping the boy distracted with stories about the tallest buildings he'd designed. Hours later, when Miles was finally discharged with a blue cast, Julian insisted on driving them home. He carried a sleepy Miles up to their apartment, while Tessa unlocked the door. Their home was small but tidy, a modest two-bedroom apartment with simple furniture and walls covered in Miles's artwork and achievement certificates. Julian felt oddly privileged to see this private space, so different from his cold, perfect penthouse. After Miles was settled in bed, Tessa walked Julian to the door. Thank you, she said simply. Julian nodded. Call me if you need anything. Anything at all. As he turned to leave, Tessa called after him. Julian? He looked back, surprised by her use of his first name. About that dinner, she said quietly. Ask me again sometime. Julian smiled, not his practiced social smile, but a real one that reached his eyes. I will. The next day, flowers arrived at the clinic for Tessa with a note asking about Miles. No pressure, no mention of dinner, just genuine concern. That evening, Tessa called the number on the card. When Julian answered, she felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. Miles wants you to be the first to sign his cast, she said. If you're not too busy. Julian cancelled a business dinner without hesitation. I'll be there in 30 minutes. When he arrived at Tessa's apartment, Miles greeted him like an old friend, proudly displaying his blue cast. I told everyone a famous architect is my friend, Miles announced. Julian felt a warmth spread through his chest at the boy's words. He carefully signed the cast, drawing a small skyscraper next to his name. While Miles watched TV, Julian helped Tessa prepare a simple dinner in her tiny kitchen. She was surprised by how naturally he fit into their modest home, chopping vegetables and asking thoughtful questions about her day. Why do you keep coming back? Tessa asked abruptly. There must be 100 women in this city who would be a better match for you. Julian considered her question seriously. Those women want Julian Crane, businessman. You're the only person who makes me feel like just Julian. And who is just Julian? She asked. He looked at her with unexpected vulnerability. I'm still figuring that out. Their eyes held for a long moment until Miles called from the living room, breaking the tension. After dinner, Julian reluctantly prepared to leave. At the door, he turned to Tessa. Would next Friday work for dinner, just you and me? Tessa hesitated, then nodded. I'll see if my neighbor can watch Miles. For the first time in years, Julian felt genuinely excited about seeing a woman, not for show, not for business, but because he simply wanted to be in her presence. What he didn't know was that back at his office, trouble was brewing. His brother, Thomas, had been going through Julian's recent business decisions, focusing particularly on his involvement with the West Side Clinic. Thomas had never forgiven Julian for refusing to bail him out of gambling debts, and now he saw an opportunity for revenge. "I think I found Big Brother's weakness," Thomas told a society columnist over drinks. "And it's going to make a very interesting story." For their dinner date, Julian chose a small Italian restaurant far from the upscale areas where he was usually recognized. He arrived early, nervously straightening his tie. He'd deliberately dressed down in slacks and a simple button-up shirt, rather than one of his designer suits. When Tessa walked in, Julian's breath caught. She wore a simple red dress that hugged her curves, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked beautiful, but uncomfortable, scanning the restaurant as if expecting to be judged. Julian stood to greet her. "You look amazing," Tessa smiled uncertainly. "This is my only nice dress. I haven't worn it in years." "Well, you should wear it more often," Julian said, then added quickly, "But you always look beautiful." They settled into a quiet corner table where Julian had requested privacy. The waiter brought wine and Tessa took a sip, visibly relaxing. "How's Miles?" Julian asked. "Loving all the attention his cast is getting at school," Tessa said with a smile. "He tells everyone his architect friend drew him a skyscraper." Julian grinned. "He's a great kid." "He likes you," Tessa admitted. "He doesn't usually warm up to people so quickly." "What about his father?" Julian asked carefully. Tessa's expression closed slightly. "Not in the picture. He left when he found out I was pregnant, said he wasn't ready for that responsibility." "I'm sorry," Julian said quietly. Tessa shrugged, but he could see the old hurt in her eyes. "It was a long time ago. Miles and I do just fine on our own." "I'm sure you do," Julian said, "but everyone needs help sometimes." Tessa studied him over her wine glass. "And you? Do you ever need help, Julian Crane?" The question caught him off guard. Yes, more than people realize." "Tell me something real," Tessa challenged. "Something you don't tell people at your charity galas." Julian swirled his wine, considering her request. "I have a brother named Thomas. We haven't spoken properly in years, not since our father died. He thinks I abandoned him." "Did you?" Julian shook his head. "I tried to help him. He has gambling debts, drinking problems, but he doesn't want help. He wants bailouts with no consequences. The last time I refused, he punched me and told me I was dead to him." Tessa listened intently. "That must be hard." "My family is complicated," Julian admitted. "My mother cares more about appearances than actual relationships. My father was different, though. He was a doctor who worked in community clinics. That's part of why I was drawn to your clinic. It reminded me of him." "What was he like?" Tessa asked. Julian's expression softened. "Kind, dedicated. He believed in helping people who needed it most. My mother hated that he wasted his talents on people who couldn't pay much. When he died, she was almost relieved. No more embarrassment at charity events." "And you became a businessman instead of a doctor," Tessa observed. "I did," Julian admitted. "I told myself I could do more good with money than with medicine, build housing, create jobs. But somewhere along the way I started caring more about profits than people, until recently." Tessa sipped her wine. "What changed?" Julian looked at her directly. "You didn't look at me." "What?" "Everyone looks at me a certain way. They want something from me. My money, my connections, my name, but you looked right through me. It made me wonder what you saw. Or didn't see." Tessa considered this. "I've met men like you before. Rich men who think their attention is some kind of gift. Who think everyone should be grateful just to be noticed by them. And that's what you thought I was? Wasn't I right?" she challenged. Julian didn't look away. Maybe at first, but not anymore. Their food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. As they ate, Julian found himself telling Tessa things he rarely discussed. His loneliness in his perfect penthouse, his doubts about his company's impact on communities, his strained relationship with his family. Tessa, in turn, shared her struggles. As a single mother, working 2 jobs to provide for Miles, her dreams of going back to school someday to become a nurse. "Why haven't you?" Julian asked. "Time, money. The usual reasons," she said. "Miles comes first. His piano lessons, his education, those are my priorities." Julian admired her dedication. By the time dessert arrived, They were talking like old friends, comfortable and genuine with each other. Outside the restaurant, the night air was cool. Julian draped his jacket over Tessa's shoulders without comment. "Thank you for dinner," she said. "It was not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I'm not sure. Something flashier. More Julian Crane, I guess." He smiled. "I'm trying to be less Julian Crane these days." Their eyes met, and for a moment, Julian thought about kissing her. Instead, he said, "Can I drive you home?" Tessa nodded. "That would be nice." In the car, they sat in comfortable silence until Julian spoke. "I'd like to see you again." Tessa turned to look at him. "Julian, I need to be careful. I have Miles to think about, and our worlds are very different." "I know," Julian said, "but I'd like the chance to show you that doesn't matter to me." When they reached her apartment, Julian walked her to the door. This time, Tessa was the one who surprised him. She leaned up and kissed his cheek softly. "Good night, Julian," she whispered. He watched her disappear inside, his hand touching the spot where her lips had been. The next morning, Julian was in an unusually good mood as he arrived at his office. His assistant, Margaret, greeted him with her usual efficiency, but seemed tense. "Is everything all right?" Julian asked. "You might want to see this," Margaret said, handing him a tabloid magazine. Julian froze when he saw the headline, "Crane's Secret Lover, From Penthouse to Poverty." Below was a grainy photo of him and Tessa entering the restaurant. "How did they—" Julian began, then remembered his brother's threat. He flipped to the article, his anger growing as he read. The piece questioned why Julian Crane would be interested in an ordinary single mother from the West Side district. It implied that his business interests in the neighborhood might include more than just property development. "Has Crane found true love?" it concluded. "Or is this just another conquest for the notorious bachelor?" Julian slammed the magazine down. "Get my lawyer on the phone." Before Margaret could respond, his mother burst into the office waving the same tabloid. "Julian, what is the meaning of this? Who is this woman?" Julian sighed. "Her name is Tessa Monroe. She works at the West Side Clinic." Eleanor's face showed her disgust. "A clinic receptionist? Julian, what are you thinking? The board members are already asking questions." "About what?" Julian demanded. "About your judgment. First you pour money into that neighborhood clinic, then you're seen with this woman. People are talking, Julian." "Let them talk," Julian said coldly. Eleanor stepped closer. "Don't be naive. You have responsibilities to this family, to this company. Your father's sentimentality nearly ruined us once. I won't let you make the same mistake." "This conversation is over, Mother," Julian said firmly. "Margaret, please show Mrs. Crane out." After his mother left, Julian called Thomas, but the call went straight to voicemail. Next, he called Tessa at the clinic, but was told she had taken the day off. With growing concern, he drove to her apartment. When Tessa opened the door, her eyes were red from crying. She held up the tabloid without a word. "Tessa, I'm so sorry," Julian said. "This was my brother's doing." "I'll fix it." "Fix it?" Tessa laughed bitterly. "How exactly do you fix this? Everyone at the clinic has seen it. My neighbors. Even Miles's teacher called me." Julian stepped inside, closing the door. "I'll make a statement, threaten a lawsuit. Whatever it takes." "That's not the point," Tessa exclaimed. "This is exactly why someone like me can't be involved with someone like you. Your world it's toxic, Julian." "This isn't my world," Julian protested. "I never wanted this." "But it follows you everywhere," Tessa said tiredly. "And now it's touching my life, my son's life." Julian felt desperation rising. "Tessa, please, don't let my brother win like this. Don't let him ruin what we could have." "What exactly could we have, Julian?" Tessa asked, suddenly looking exhausted. "A few nice dinners before you get bored and move on to someone more exciting? More suitable?" The accusation stung. "Is that what you think of me, that I'm just playing some game?" Tessa sank onto her couch. "I don't know what to think anymore, but I know I can't do this. My life was complicated enough before you came into it." Julian knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "Tessa, look at me. Really, look at me." Reluctantly, she met his eyes. "What I feel for you is real," Julian said softly. "More real than anything I've felt in years. You make me want to be a better man, the kind of man my father would have been proud of." Tessa's eyes filled with tears. "Julian, The door opened suddenly and Miles burst in, followed by Tessa's neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. "Mom," Miles exclaimed, "kids at school said you were in a magazine with Mr. Julian." Tessa quickly wiped her eyes. "Miles, it's not—" "Is it true?" Miles asked Julian, directly. "Are you my mom's boyfriend now?" Julian looked at Tessa, uncertain how to answer. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "I'm your mom's friend," Julian said carefully. "I care about her very much, and about you too." Miles considered this, then grinned. "Cool. Can we go to your tall building sometime? I want to see the top." Despite everything, Julian chuckled. "Sure, buddy, if your mum says it's okay." Mrs. Rodriguez, who had been watching this exchange with open curiosity, cleared her throat. "I should be going. Call me if you need anything, Tessa." After she left, Tessa sent Miles to his room to do homework. When they were alone again, Julian spoke quietly. "I don't want to make your life harder, Tessa, but I don't want to walk away either." Tessa sighed. "I need time to think, Julian. This is all happening so fast." Julian nodded, understanding. "Take all the time you need. I'll handle the press. And Tessa, I'm not going anywhere." As Julian left her apartment, his phone rang. It was his assistant. "Mr. Crane, the board is calling an emergency meeting. They're questioning your recent investments in the West Side District." Julian's jaw tightened. "Tell them I'll be there in an hour." The board meeting was tense from the start. Several members expressed concern about Julian's personal involvement with the clinic project. This was meant to be a tax write-off, one member argued, not a complete redirection of company resources. "The clinic serves a valuable community purpose," Julian countered, "and the positive press has been worth every penny we've invested." "Not anymore," another board member said, sliding the tabloid across the table. "This kind of attention hurts our brand." Julian was about to respond when the doors opened. His brother Thomas strolled in with a smug smile. "Sorry I'm late," Thomas said, taking a seat. "Traffic was terrible." Julian stared at him. "What are you doing here, Thomas? This is a closed meeting." "Not to major shareholders," Thomas replied, "and I've recently acquired quite a few shares, thanks to some generous investors who share my concerns about the current leadership." The room fell silent as understanding dawned. Thomas had been gathering support for a takeover. "You've been busy," Julian said coldly. "Just protecting our family legacy," Thomas replied. "Which seems necessary given your recent distractions." Julian fought to keep his composure. "If anyone would like to question my leadership of this company, I suggest you look at our profits for the last quarter. While you're at it, take a look at the positive community impact reports from our West Side initiative." Thomas leaned forward. "The board isn't questioning your business acumen, Julian. They're questioning your judgment, particularly regarding a certain clinic receptionist." Julian stood abruptly. "My personal life is not up for discussion." "It is when it affects the company," Thomas countered. "When the king of glass and steel starts slumming in the very neighborhoods he's supposed to be developing, people notice. Investors get nervous." Julian's hands curled into fists. "Choose your next words very carefully, brother." The tension in the room was palpable. Finally, one of the older board members spoke up. "Perhaps we should adjourn for now. Give everyone time to cool down." The meeting dispersed, but as Julian gathered his papers, Thomas approached him. "She won't last," Thomas said quietly. "Women like her never do in our world. They want the fantasy, but they can't handle the reality." Julian glared at him. "You don't know anything about her." "I know she's already having second thoughts," Thomas said smugly. "My source at the tabloid says she was crying when the reporter called her for comment. Poor thing wasn't ready for the spotlight." Julian grabbed his brother's lapel. "Stay away from her, Thomas, I mean it." Thomas just smiled. "Or what? You'll cut me off again?" "Too late, big brother. I don't need your money. Anymore, soon I might not even need you." As Julian drove home that evening, his mind raced. He needed to protect Tessa and Miles from the media circus. He needed to secure his position at the company. But most of all, he needed to show Tessa that what they had was worth fighting for. His phone rang. It was Tessa. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. "Of course," Julian said. "I'll come right over." "No," Tessa said. "Not here. There are reporters watching the building now. Can you meet me at the park near the clinic? In an hour?" Julian agreed, worry gnawing at him. The park was deserted when he arrived, the city skyline visible in the distance. He spotted Tessa sitting alone on a bench, her face illuminated by the moonlight. She didn't turn when he approached. "You wanted to know what I see in you?" Julian said softly. Tessa finally looked at him. There was anger in her eyes and fear. "You see something that isn't there, Julian?" "No," he replied. "I see the woman who makes the noise stop in my head, the only one who makes me feel like I'm not pretending." Her eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing. Julian took a deep breath. "My brother is trying to take the company from me. He's using my feelings for you as a weapon." "I know," Tessa said. "A reporter told me. Said I was ruining your reputation, costing you millions." "I don't care about the money," Julian said firmly. "But I care about my son," Tessa countered. "About his stability, his happiness. He doesn't deserve to be in the middle of a tabloid circus." Julian moved closer. "Let me protect you both. I have resources, connections." "That's exactly the problem," Tessa said, standing up. "Your resources, your connections, your world. It's all too much, Julian. Too complicated." "What are you saying?" Julian asked, though he feared he already knew. "I'm saying goodbye," Tessa whispered. "For both our sakes." Julian felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. "Tessa, please, don't do this." "I have to," she said, her voice breaking. "I need to protect Miles and myself." She turned to leave, but Julian called after her. "When you're ready to believe that what we have is real, that it's worth fighting for, I'll still be here." Tessa paused but didn't look back. "Goodbye, Julian." As he watched her walk away, Julian felt something breaking inside him. For the first time in his adult life, he had offered someone his true self, not his money or his power, just his heart. And it hadn't been enough. He stood alone in the park long after she had gone, the city lights blurring through his tears. 2 weeks passed, and Julian threw himself into work, trying to ignore the emptiness he felt. He restructured his company's leadership to block Thomas's takeover attempts. He gave statements to the press, denying any impropriety with the West Side Clinic funding. He even attended his mother's charity gala with a socialite on his arm, all for show, all to protect what mattered. But he didn't stop thinking about Tessa, about Miles, about the glimpse of a different life he'd had with them. Every day, he drove past the clinic, slowing down but never stopping. Twice he saw Tessa outside, but she didn't see him, or perhaps she pretended not to. At the clinic, Tessa maintained her professional demeanor, but her colleagues noticed the change in her. The light in her eyes had dimmed. She jumped whenever the clinic door opened, both hoping and fearing it might be Julian. The tabloid story had eventually died down, replaced by newer scandals. But the damage was done. Some patients at the clinic treated Tessa differently now. Some with awe, some with judgment. Miles had been teased at school until the principal intervened. "You miss him," Mrs. Rodriguez said one evening as she watched Miles practice piano, while Tessa stared blankly out the window. "It doesn't matter," Tessa replied. "It was never going to work." "Why not?" the older woman challenged. "Because he has money. Because people talk. Because people like Julian Crane don't end up with women like me," Tessa said flatly. "Not in real life," Mrs. Rodriguez snorted. "And what is real life exactly? Is it being lonely when you don't have to be? Is it teaching your son that love isn't worth fighting for?" Tessa had no answer. Meanwhile, Julian faced his own critic. His father's oldest friend, Dr. James Chen, visited Julian's office unannounced. "Your father would be disappointed," Dr. Chen said bluntly, sitting across from Julian's desk. Julian stiffened. "I'm protecting my company. My father would understand that." "No," Dr. Chen said. "He would understand protecting the clinic, which you've done well. But he wouldn't understand you giving up on that woman." Julian looked surprised. "How do you know about Tessa?" "I still have friends at the clinic," Dr. Chen said with a small smile. "They tell me she made you different. Better." Julian sighed. She ended things. She said my world was too complicated. And you just accepted that? Dr. Chen asked. The Julian Crane I know doesn't give up so easily, at least not on business deals. This isn't a business deal, Julian snapped. No, Dr. Chen agreed. It's much more important. Which is why I don't understand why you're sitting here in your glass tower instead of fighting for her. The words hit Julian hard. He'd been so focused on protecting Tessa from afar, handling the media, neutralizing Thomas, that he hadn't actually fought for their relationship itself. That evening, Julian sat alone in his penthouse, looking at the city lights. His phone rang. It was Thomas. Congratulations on outmaneuvering me with the board, Thomas said, his voice tight. Always the perfect son, aren't you? What do you want, Thomas? Julian asked tiredly. There was a pause. I found some of Dad's old papers, letters he wrote to you that Mom never gave you. Julian sat up straighter. What? I was looking for leverage, Thomas admitted. Found a box of his things in the storage unit. Turns out the old man wrote to you a lot in those last months. Wanted to make sure you knew he was proud of you, even though you chose business over medicine. Julian's throat tightened. Why are you telling me this? Another pause. Because I read them, Julian. All of them. Dad wasn't who Mom always said he was. He wasn't weak or sentimental. He was just good. And he knew you were too. Julian was stunned by the emotion in his brother's voice. I've been angry at the wrong person, Thomas continued. For years. Where are these letters now? Julian asked. I'll bring them by. Tomorrow, Thomas said. And Julian, I'm sorry about the tabloid, about the clinic, about everything. After hanging up, Julian sat in the dark for a long time thinking about his father, about legacy, about what really mattered. The next morning, Julian made a decision. He called an emergency board meeting and laid out his plan. I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations, he announced to the shocked board members. I'll remain as chairman, but I'm appointing Margaret Chen as CEO. His assistant looked stunned. Mr. Crane, You've been running this company alongside me for years, Margaret, Julian said. It's time you got the title and compensation to match. And what will you be doing? One board member asked. Julian smiled. I'm establishing the William Crane Foundation for Community Health, named after my father. We'll be funding clinics throughout the city, starting with West Side. The meeting adjourned with mixed reactions, but Julian didn't care. For the first time in years, he felt like he was on the right path. That afternoon, Julian visited the West Side Clinic with the foundation paperwork. The director was overjoyed, but Julian had really come to see Tessa. Her desk was empty. The nurse at reception told him she had taken some personal time. Her son has a piano competition today, she explained. At the downtown conservatory, Julian checked his watch and hurried to his car. The conservatory auditorium was packed with parents and music teachers when Julian slipped in at the back. On stage, a nervous-looking girl was finishing a piece by Chopin. The program in Julian's hand told him Miles would be performing next. Julian scanned the audience and spotted Tessa sitting near the front, her posture tense with anticipation. As Miles walked onto the stage in a too-large suit, Julian saw Tessa lean forward, her love for her son evident in every line of her body. Miles sat at the grand piano, took a deep breath, and began to play. The piece was challenging. Bach's Prelude in C major, but Miles played with technical precision and unexpected emotion for a 9-year-old. Julian felt a surge of pride that surprised him with its intensity. When the piece ended, the audience erupted in applause. Miles beamed, searching the crowd until he found his mother. Tessa was on her feet, clapping and wiping tears. Julian found himself clapping just as enthusiastically. After the final performer, awards were announced. When Miles received second place, his face lit up with joy. Julian watched as Tessa embraced her son at the edge of the stage, their happiness palpable even from a distance. Julian debated approaching them there, but decided against it. This was their moment. Instead, he waited outside near the conservatory steps. When Tessa and Miles emerged, Miles spotted him first. "Mr. Julian," the boy called, breaking away from his mother to run toward him. Julian knelt to receive Miles's enthusiastic hug. "You were amazing, Miles, truly." "Did you hear me play? I got second place," Miles exclaimed, holding up his certificate. "I did hear you," Julian confirmed. "Bach would have been proud." Tessa approached more cautiously. "Julian, I didn't expect to see you here." "I went to the clinic," Julian explained, standing up. "They told me where you were." An awkward silence fell between them, broken by Miles tugging on his mother's hand. "Mom, can Mr. Julian come to our celebration dinner? Please." Tessa hesitated, looking at Julian uncertainty. "Miles, I'm not sure if—" "I'd be honored," Julian said quietly, "if you'll have me." Something shifted in Tessa's expression, a softening around her eyes. "It's just pizza at our place. Nothing fancy." "Sounds perfect," Julian replied. As they walked to Julian's car, Miles chatted excitedly about the competition and his piano teacher's praise. Julian listened attentively, asking questions that made the boy beam with pride. Tessa watched their interaction with mixed emotions. She had missed Julian more than she wanted to admit. Seeing him with Miles, so natural, so genuine, made her question her decision to end things. At their apartment, Mrs. Rodriguez was waiting with homemade cookies to celebrate. Her eyebrows shot up when she saw Julian, but she greeted him warmly. "About time," she whispered to Tessa as they went to the kitchen to get plates. After pizza and cookies, Miles showed Julian his new piano books. "My teacher says I might be ready for Beethoven soon," he said proudly. "That's impressive," Julian said. "Beethoven is challenging." "But worth it," Miles said seriously. "Mom says the best things always are." Julian's eyes met Tessa's across the room. "Your mom is very wise." When Miles finally went to bed, exhausted from his big day, Julian and Tessa sat awkwardly in the small living room. "Thank you for letting me be part of this," Julian said. Tessa nodded. "Miles missed you. He asks about you." "And you?" Julian asked softly. "Did you miss me too?" Tessa looked down at her hands. "Julian, nothing has changed. Your world is still your world, and mine is still mine." "That's where you're wrong," Julian said. He pulled out a folder and handed it to her. "Things have changed. I've changed." Tessa opened the folder and scanned the documents inside. "The William Crane Foundation? You're stepping down as CEO?" Julian nodded. "I realized something these past weeks. My father didn't care about wealth or status. He cared about making a difference. It took me too long to understand that, but I do now." Tessa looked skeptical. "So you're giving up your company?" "Not giving up," Julian clarified. "Refocusing. The foundation will support community health initiatives throughout the city, and I'd like you to be part of it if you want." "Me? Why?" "Because you understand the needs better than I ever could," Julian said, "and because I trust your judgment, your heart." Tessa set the folder aside. "Julian, if this is some grand gesture to win me back—" "It's not," Julian interrupted. "I mean, I won't pretend I don't hope it might help, but I made this decision for myself because it's right, because it's who I want to be." Tessa studied his face, searching for any sign of insincerity. "And your brother? Your mother? The board?" "Thomas and I are working things out," Julian said. "He found some letters my father wrote me before he died. It's changing things between us. As for my mother, she'll adjust. The board has already approved everything. What about the tabloids, the publicity?" Julian shrugged. "Old news. They've moved on to some senator's scandal. Besides, I don't care what. Do they print anymore?" Tessa stood and walked to the window, looking out at the night sky. "When you first started coming to the clinic, I thought you were just another rich man looking for a tax write-off or good publicity." "And now?" Julian asked, coming to stand beside her. "Now I don't know what to think," she admitted. "Part of me is afraid to trust this, to trust you." Julian turned to face her. "Tessa, when we met, you wouldn't look at me, really look at me. You saw the money, the reputation, all the surfaces, just like everyone else. But then something changed. You started seeing me, the real me with all my flaws and doubts." "Julian, let me finish," he said gently. "That's what I want. Someone who sees me for who I am, not what I have. Someone who challenges me to be better. Someone who makes the noise stop in my head." Tessa's eyes filled with tears. "I'm scared, Julian. Scared of letting you in. scared of what happens if it doesn't work. Miles adores you already, and if you left, I won't, Julian promised. I'm not his father. I won't disappear when things get hard. Tessa wiped her eyes. How can you be so sure about us? We're so different. Julian smiled. That's exactly why we work. You keep me grounded. You remind me what matters. He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. I love you, Tessa, Julian said simply. I love your strength, your dedication to Miles, the way you don't let anyone or anything compromise who you are. I love that you made me work to earn your trust. Tessa's breath caught. Julian, you don't have to say anything, he assured her. I just needed you to know. Tessa looked up at him, really looked at him, and saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the sincerity in his expression. This wasn't Julian Crane, successful businessman. This was just Julian, a man laying his heart bare. When I ended things, Tessa said quietly, I told myself it was to protect Miles. But I was protecting myself too. Because caring about you scared me, it still does. Being worthy of that care scares me too, Julian admitted. But I want to try every day. Tessa took a deep breath and stepped closer to him. I missed you, she whispered. We both did. Julian's heart swelled. Carefully, as if she might break, he pulled her into his arms. When their lips finally met, it felt like coming home. Mom? Miles's sleepy voice called from the hallway. Is Mr. Julian still here? They broke apart, both smiling. Yes, buddy, I'm still here, Julian called back. Miles appeared in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes. Are you going to be here tomorrow too? Julian looked at Tessa, a question in his eyes. She hesitated only briefly before nodding. Yes, Miles, Julian said. I'll be here tomorrow. And many more tomorrows after that, if you and your mom are okay with that. Miles grinned. Good. Can we go see your tall building tomorrow? You promised? Absolutely, Julian laughed. Now, back to bed. It's late. After Miles trudged back to his room, Julian turned to Tessa. Is that really okay, me being around more? Tessa smiled, a full, genuine smile that transformed her face. Yes. But Julian? This has to be real, all of it. The foundation, us, everything. No games, no temporary fixes. As real as it gets, Julian promised, pulling her close again. I'm done pretending. 6 months later, Julian stood in the newly expanded West Side Clinic at its grand reopening. The William Crane Foundation had funded state-of-the-art equipment and additional staff. The clinic director was giving a speech thanking Julian, but Julian's eyes were on Tessa. She stood at the back of the room in her new role as the Foundation's community liaison, looking professional and confident. When she caught him watching her, she smiled. That special smile she reserved just for him. Beside her stood Miles, now 10, dressed in a suit that matched Julian's for the occasion. The boy had recently moved his piano into Julian's penthouse, where he, Tessa, and Julian spent most evenings now. Julian's mother was there too, standing stiffly but present, a small victory. Thomas stood nearby, sober for 3 months, and working with Julian on the Foundation's financial planning. When the ribbon-cutting ceremony ended, Julian made his way through the crowd to Tessa's side. What did you think? He asked. Your father would be proud, she said, squeezing his hand. Julian kissed her softly. I have something to ask you. Both of you, actually, he added, looking at Miles. What is it? Miles asked curiously. Julian knelt, down to Miles's level. I wanted to ask if it would be okay with you if I asked your mom to marry me. Miles's eyes widened. Really? Like, be my stepdad for real? If that's okay with you, Julian said seriously. Miles threw his arms around Julian's neck. Yes. Can I be best man? Julian laughed. Absolutely. Standing up, he turned to Tessa, whose eyes were shining with tears. He took her hand and placed a small velvet box in it. I'm not asking right now, he said quietly. That moment should be private, but I wanted you to know it's coming when you're ready. Tessa closed her fingers around the box. I'm ready, she whispered. I have been for a while now. Julian's heart soared. You're sure? Because we can wait. Tessa silenced him with a kiss. Julian Crane, for once in your life, stop talking and just be happy. Julian laughed. pulling her close as Miles danced around them excitedly. Around them, clinic staff applauded, and even Eleanor Crane managed a reluctant smile. Later that evening, as they stood on the balcony of Julian's penthouse, their penthouse now, watching the sunset over the city, Julian held Tessa close. "Who would have thought?" he murmured against her hair. "All because you wouldn't look at me." Tessa turned in his arms, her eyes meeting his with all the love, trust and challenge that had drawn him to her from the beginning. "Oh, I was looking," she said softly. "I just waited until there was something real to see." Julian smiled and kissed her, knowing he had finally found his true home, not in glass towers or business empires, but in the eyes of a woman who had taught him what it meant to be truly seen. Behind them, Miles played a gentle melody on the piano, the perfect soundtrack to their beginning, the end.